The story begins with Parker Schnabel stepping into a place that feels very different from the goldfields he knows so well. Instead of standing in the Yukon, surrounded by machines, gravel, and the sound of engines, he is in the rugged hills of California. The ground is wet, the sky is dark, and rain is already starting to fall over the rough landscape. Parker is not here to mine a claim or hit a season goal. This time, he is here to chase a treasure that was hidden more than 100 years ago. A treasure that may still be buried somewhere in the wild terrain. A treasure that outlaws tried to escape with before it mysteriously vanished. Parker is not alone in this search. He is joined by an explorer who has spent his life following old stories, forgotten paths, and unsolved mysteries. Together, they begin a hunt that mixes history, danger, and gold in a way Parker has never experienced before. The reason Parker is here is simple. A stagecoach robbery from the Wild West era ended with a huge amount of gold disappearing into the hills of California. The outlaws who took it never recovered it, and the gold was never found. Over the years, people have searched, guessed, and argued about what happened to it. But the truth is still buried somewhere in the dirt. The estimated value of the treasure today is about $10 million, a massive amount that makes the mystery even more intense. The search needs more than old stories. It needs someone who understands gold the way miners understand it. Someone who can read the land, the rocks, the way water moves, and the way time changes everything. That is why Parker was brought into the hunt. His knowledge of gold deposits, erosion, and landscape changes gives him a skill set that fits this search perfectly. When Parker arrives, he takes in the area around him with a serious, focused look. He studies the hillsides, the sediment, the creek beds, and the routes the outlaws might have used. Even though he has never hunted treasure like this before, he treats the land the same way he treats a promising cut back in the Yukon. He looks for clues that the earth itself can give. He explains that gold does not travel far unless something forces it to. It often settles in places where water slows down, where old channels were carved by storms, or where outlaws might have tried to hide it quickly. His ability to look at the ground and guess what happened long ago instantly becomes a major part of the investigation. But the weather does not stay calm. A strong storm quickly rolls through the area, dropping heavy sheets of rain on the hills and valleys. The mud begins to slide, water rushes through the small channels, and the entire terrain starts to shift. This turns the search into a race against nature. Every minute of rain can erase clues, wash away loose soil, and cover the paths the outlaws once walked. For Parker, this is not new. Weather is always a problem in mining, and he is used to fighting storms, breakdowns, and mud that seems to pull everything into the ground. But this time, the storm is washing away history instead of hiding gold in bedrock. He knows they have to move fast, think clearly, and use every bit of daylight they have. As Parker and his partner continue searching, they begin to uncover more about the stagecoach robbery itself. The robbers managed to steal a large amount of gold, but something went wrong during their escape. They were forced to leave the main route and move through rough terrain, likely under pressure from lawmen or from injuries they suffered during the robbery. At some point along that escape, the gold vanished. Maybe they hid it. Maybe they dropped some of it. Maybe the landscape changed so much over the decades
that the place where they left it no longer looks the same. Parker listens carefully to every detail of the historical story, trying to match it with the physical clues in front of them. He explains that the land always tells the truth, even when stories from the past get twisted or changed. For fans who have watched Parker for years, this moment shows a very different version of him. Instead of giving orders to his crew, he is working side by side with someone who follows legends, old maps, and forgotten trails. Instead of pushing machines to their limits, he is using his mind to solve a mystery that mixes geology with history. This search is not about ounces, yards, or season totals. It is about understanding where the gold went when it left the hands of outlaws more than a century ago. It is about finding something that people thought might never be found again. The deeper they go into the search, the more Parker begins to show how much his mining experience connects to treasure hunting. He knows how rivers move over time, how floods change the shape of valleys, and how gold settles in cracks or pockets. He understands how storms reshape everything, sometimes hiding things more deeply, and sometimes exposing something that has been buried for years. The storm they are dealing with becomes both a problem and an opportunity. It destroys clues, but it can also loosen the soil in places where something might be buried. Parker uses this knowledge to focus on areas that fit the most logical hiding spots. He checks the bends of old creek beds, the edges where runoff slows down, and the places where outlaws may have stopped to catch their breath. As the search continues, the storm becomes more intense. The ground turns into thick mud, and every step forward becomes a struggle. Water slides down the hillsides, turning the smallest slopes into slippery danger zones. But even in this chaos, Parker does not lose focus. He moves carefully, always studying the land. He explains that outlaws in the past would not have chosen a perfectly flat spot or a convenient place to hide the gold. They would have been rushed, scared, and carrying a heavy load. That means the gold is likely hidden in a place that made sense only for someone who needed to disappear quickly. A place that was easy to reach in a moment of panic. A place that could hide something heavy. A place that has changed over time, but not enough to erase the truth completely. As they move through the rain, Parker begins to see a pattern in the landscape. The clues from history and the clues from the earth begin to line up. He points out areas where the water flow suggests that soil has been piled up or shifted unnaturally. He notices sections where the hillside looks different from the surrounding areas, as if something once disturbed the ground. He studies the rocks, the bends in the creek bed, and the sediment layers that have formed over decades. Slowly, he forms a theory about what happened to the missing gold. It becomes clear that the search is no longer just a simple hunt. It is a puzzle, and Parker is right in the middle of solving it. With the storm raging around them, Parker's focus becomes sharper than ever. He and his partner start marking spots where the terrain shows unusual patterns. The soil looks denser in some places, softer in others, and water movement has left small channels that hint at what might be hidden beneath. Parker explains that outlaws of the past knew how to hide treasure, but they were not perfect. They acted quickly and relied on what the land offered. That means the gold could be under something that seems ordinary now, like a mound of mud, a cluster of rocks, or even a small depression in the ground that has been overlooked for years. Every detail matters, and Parker is trained to notice things others might miss. As the rain continues to pour, they reach a section of the creek bed that looks promising. Parker crouches down and starts examining the mud closely. He taps it with a stick, checking for differences in sound and texture. Small metallic flakes appear in some spots. Parker's eyes light up. "This is the kind of signal I look for back in the Yukon," he says. "It's not a guarantee, but it tells me we are on the right track." The excitement in his voice is clear, even as the storm lashes against them. This is the moment when history and geology collide. The gold they're chasing may have been buried for over 100 years, but the earth still carries evidence of it. Working together, Parker and his partner start creating a map of the area, noting every mound, depression, and unusual water pattern. They trace paths that the outlaws may have used, estimating where they stopped, where they hid, and how they might have been forced off their planned route by the terrain or by law enforcement. Every observation is recorded and discussed, compared to old maps and written accounts. Parker is surprised at how much historical detail matches the land. Even after a century, subtle clues remain. These are the types of things he cannot see when he is mining gold and modern claims. Here,
The challenge is not just to extract gold, but to think like the people who once carried it across treacherous hills. The next morning, the storm has passed, leaving the land soaked but more visible.
Has carved deeper into the soil, revealing patterns that were hidden by vegetation and mud. Parker takes full advantage of this. He kneels by a slope and starts examining small stones and gravel, noticing scratches, small indentations, and areas where erosion has removed the top layer of soil unevenly. Every detail gives him clues. He begins to piece together a mental image of the stagecoach's path, where the outlaws may have slowed and where the gold could have been stashed in a hurry. The land begins to tell its story, and Parker is ready to listen. As they move deeper into the search, Parker explains some of the ways gold behaves in nature. Gold is heavy, he says. It doesn't just roll around. It stays where it is unless moved by water or humans. If the outlaws dropped it or buried it, it will still be in a place that makes sense, somewhere that can hold weight and stay hidden. The trick is finding that place after decades of change. This understanding becomes crucial. He points out several spots where the water has eroded to banks but left depressions that could have concealed heavy objects. He notes that these are areas that might have been overlooked by previous hunters who relied only on maps or stories. Parker's mining instincts combine with his new focus on historical treasure, and the search starts to feel like a puzzle that is gradually coming together. By mid-afternoon, the two explorers discover an area that seems especially promising. The creek widens slightly, and the soil shows unnatural patterns, almost as if someone had dug and refilled the section long ago. Parker crouches down and runs his hands over the wet ground. "This could be it," he says quietly. "This is the kind of place where someone could hide a heavy load quickly, then leave without being seen. The water patterns, the soil texture, the slope, it all adds up." He begins marking the area with small flags, indicating spots that need closer inspection. Even in his soaked clothes and muddy boots, Parker looks calm and collected. He is used to harsh conditions, but here he is combining patience, knowledge, and instinct to uncover something that might never have been touched for 100 years. They begin the first careful excavation. Parker uses small tools to move soil carefully, ensuring nothing is damaged. Every handful of mud is inspected, and every small stone is lifted and checked. They do this to protect valuable nuggets, and in treasure hunting, it is the same. Anything heavy or unusual could be the key to the missing gold. Hours pass as they dig slowly and methodically, removing soil layer by layer. The storm has made the ground soft but also unstable, so every movement requires caution. Parker's attention to detail impresses his partner, who has never seen anyone so focused on reading the land and thinking like both a miner and a historian. After several hours of digging, a faint metallic glint catches Parker's eye. He freezes for a moment, then carefully uncovers the object. It is a small metal container, partially buried but intact. His heart beats faster. "This could be the start," he says, trying to keep his voice steady. "It's not the main treasure, but it's a sign that we are in the right area. Whoever hid the gold may have used smaller containers to move it around before burying it in its final spot." He carefully removes the container and opens it. Inside are a few gold coins and some old papers. The coins are old and worn, but unmistakably gold. Parker's excitement grows, but he knows this is just a clue, not the main prize. The papers might have more information about where the gold was moved, and he carefully sets them aside for later study. Finding this first clue changes the energy of the search. Parker's instincts have proven correct, and now they know that the treasure is not a legend or a rumor. It exists, and it is still somewhere in the hills. The excitement drives them to work faster, but Parker remains methodical. He understands that rushing could ruin the evidence or cause them to miss the real gold. The storm has shifted the soil and changed the landscape, but it has also revealed patterns that were hidden before. Parker uses every detail to guide the next steps of the search, marking spots where the main treasure might be buried based on what they have discovered so far. As the sun sets, the team takes a short break, wet and tired,
but exhilarated. Parker looks at the surrounding hills and explains how he will approach the next phase. He points out small ridges, depressions, and areas where runoff could have moved soil or hidden heavy objects. He theorizes about where the outlaws may have buried parts of the gold in a hurry. Each spot is analyzed with precision, combining knowledge of gold movement, water flow, and historical routes. Even after decades, the land holds clues, and Parker is determined to follow every lead. The night brings new challenges. Darkness and residual water from the storm make it difficult to navigate. Parker relies on maps, flashlights, and his memory of the terrain. He begins to notice subtle changes in the earth that others might overlook. A slightly flattened patch of mud, a cluster of stones arranged oddly, a depression that seems too regular to be natural. Each observation is noted and cross-checked with historical accounts of the stagecoach robbery. Parker explains that treasure hunting is a combination of science, experience, and intuition. One wrong step or assumption could mean missing the gold entirely. The next morning, the team returns to the site, the sun cutting through the remaining storm clouds. The ground is still wet and slick, but the air is clearer, giving a better view of the surrounding landscape. Parker kneels and studies the creek bed again, carefully noting every irregularity.
He points out small indentations and raised areas that, at first glance, appear ordinary, but in reality are consistent with the weight of heavy objects buried decades ago. These outlaws were smart, but they had limits, Parker says. They had to hide the gold where it would be safe, but they also had to move it quickly. Nature has shifted things a bit, but the signs are still here. Parker begins marking what he calls the primary zones. These are areas where clues from the first small container, water erosion, and historical accounts all intersect. He explains that by focusing on these zones, they increase their chances of finding the main treasure. The process is slow, careful, and exhausting, but Parker treats every inch of the ground with precision. He is fully aware that this gold has been hidden for more than a century, and a single mistake could ruin the chance of recovering it. As they start digging in the primary zone, Parker explains the importance of layering. Gold is heavy, he says. If it was buried, the earth might have shifted, but it would still be under compact soil. We need to remove each layer carefully. One wrong move, and you could lose your clue. He demonstrates how to use small tools to peel back the soil, checking every handful for metallic traces, unusual textures, or signs of disturbance. Every movement is deliberate. Parker's mining experience translates perfectly into this historical treasure hunt, combining patience, observation, and problem-solving. Hours pass. The rainstorm has washed away loose soil, leaving behind hardened earth and layers that reveal signs of digging. Parker spots what looks like an unnatural mound near a tree. He crouches and taps the soil lightly. There is a hollow sound underneath. "This is it," he whispers, signaling the team to proceed slowly. They clear away the top layer, revealing the edge of a large wooden crate partially buried. The wood looks aged but intact, resistant to decay despite the wet conditions. Parker examines the crate, checking for nails, seams, and signs of reinforcement. It is heavier than expected, suggesting it contains a substantial amount of treasure. With care, the team begins to lift the crate from the ground. Parker's eyes widen as he feels its weight. "This is what we've been looking for," he says, his voice a mix of excitement and disbelief. The crate is moved to a more secure area, and the team begins carefully prying it open. Layers of cloth, old packaging, and metal reinforcements are peeled back. Inside, gold coins, bullion, and small containers packed with precious metals are revealed. Parker's instincts have proven correct. The treasure is real, intact, and breathtaking. The gold gleams in the sunlight, reflecting the rain-soaked ground, and the moment feels surreal. They are holding a piece of history that has been lost for over a century. While the treasure is being cataloged, Parker reflects on the hunt. He explains how the combination of geology, historical research, and observation led them to this spot. "This isn't luck," he says. "Every clue mattered. Every small detail guided us. From the creek patterns to the soil texture, even the old maps, all of it helped us find this. That's what I do in the Yukon. But here, history added another layer of complexity. It makes the discovery even more special." As they examine the treasure, Parker notices markings on some of the coins and containers. "These markings are unique," he says. "They tell a story about who handled the gold, where it was, and possibly even the original owners. This isn't just gold, it's history. Each piece has a tale, and now we get to uncover it." He carefully takes notes and photographs every item, emphasizing that preserving the history is as important as finding the treasure itself. The excitement doesn't end there. Parker and his partner decide to investigate the surrounding area for any additional caches. Using the knowledge gained from the primary find, they identify several secondary zones that could contain smaller containers or clues about how the gold was moved. They dig systematically, uncovering a few more small containers with coins, old notes, and items that could have been used by the outlaws during their escape. Each discovery adds context to the story, painting a clearer picture of the historical event and the cleverness of the criminals who buried the treasure. While cataloging the finds, Parker reflects on the challenges of working in this environment. "Mining in the Yukon is tough, but it's predictable in a way," he explains. "Here, we have to read both nature and history. The storm changed the landscape, the creek shifted, and decades of erosion disguised the clues. Finding the treasure required understanding how the land evolved over time. That's a skill every miner develops, but combining it with historical detective work makes it a whole new experience." The day wears on, and Parker begins analyzing the papers found in the first container. They contain rough sketches,
area, notes about the stagecoach robbery, and references to hidden spots where the gold could have been transferred. Parker cross-references the sketches with the land they just surveyed. Each mark matches what they see on the ground, confirming the accuracy of the historical documents. "It's amazing," he says. "These notes guided the original outlaws, and now they guide us. History has left breadcrumbs, and we just had to follow them carefully." As the sun begins to set, Parker and his team pause to review the day's progress. The crates have been secured, every coin documented, and the surrounding area mapped for potential secondary finds. The mood is electric, with a mix of exhaustion and exhilaration. Parker explains that the hunt is not over. "There's still more out there," he says. "We've uncovered the main stash, but there are likely smaller caches, hidden notes, or other clues that could reveal even more about this heist. That's the thrill of it. History doesn't give up its secrets easily, and that's why treasure hunting is so rewarding." As night falls, Parker sets up a small base near the dig site. Using a flashlight, he continues analyzing the notes, sketching maps, and planning the next day's search. Even in the dark, his attention to detail doesn't falter. Every line on the paper, every indentation in the soil, and every clue from the terrain is considered. Parker explains that patience is key. Rushing can ruin evidence, damage the treasure, or miss secondary clues. We have to be methodical. Treasure hunting is a mix of excitement and patience. You have to respect both the history and the land. As the morning breaks, the team returns to the secondary zones. Parker identifies several areas where erosion has uncovered unusual soil patterns, depressions, and small rock formations. He uses his mining experience to assess the weight the ground can hold and the likelihood of buried objects. Slowly, carefully, they begin excavating. Each shovelful of soil is checked, tapped for metallic sounds, and inspected for small gold fragments. Hours of work lead to the discovery of several smaller containers, each holding gold coins, silver bars, or items that were used by the outlaws during the original robbery. Every find reinforces the